The room was quiet in that sharp, uncomfortable way you only get at family dinners where something has just happened, or is about to. I sat at the far end of the table, my napkin folded too neatly in my lap, counting the seconds between awkward silences and performative laughter. My name is Olivia Reyes. To the United States Census Bureau, I am a mid-level bureaucratic consultant. To my family, I am a glorified secretary who works in a windowless government basement, filing paperwork that no one reads. But in reality, I am a senior operations officer for the Defense Clandestine Service. I don't file paperwork. I authorize kinetic strikes. I reroute satellite constellations. And I decide which Special Forces teams go home to their families and which ones have to stay in the dark a little longer. Tonight, however, I was just Olivia, the quiet sister, the disappointing daughter, and I was expected to keep my mouth shut while the spotlight landed squarely on my little sister, Emma, and her new fiancé. Emma arrived with Ryan like she was walking into a movie premiere. She wore the kind of red dress that made you forget it was supposed to be a casual Tuesday dinner. Ryan followed behind her, tall, broad-shouldered, radiating military confidence in that quiet, unshakable way only Special Forces guys can pull off. My dad clapped him on the back as if he'd just met a long-lost son. My mom fluttered around him like a nervous hostess on prom night, offering drinks, offering appetizers, offering adoration. They asked him everything: where he trained, how many deployments had he done, whether he ever saw action. Every answer Ryan gave was met with wide eyes and exaggerated nods. When he mentioned he'd once parachuted into the Syrian border region, my father nearly choked on his bourbon. "A hero," my dad announced, raising his glass. "A real American hero sitting at our table." Meanwhile, I stirred my drink, invisible in plain sight. I had placed my phone face down on the table next to my fork. It was a standard-issue smartphone on the outside, but the internal hardware was modified by the NSA. It was encrypted with a rolling 256-bit key. It never rang for telemarketers. It never rang for spam. In fact, it almost never rang at all. But I kept it close. Always. Emma played the room like a seasoned politician. She dropped hints about Ryan's heroics, emphasized how proud she was, and made sure to slip in little barbs about how not everyone at this table knows what real pressure feels like. She didn't look at me when she said it, but she didn't need to. I could feel the sting anyway. This wasn't new. It was a pattern. At every family event, Emma somehow turned the conversation toward herself and turned me into a footnote. I used to push back. I used to try to explain that logistics meant moving nuclear assets, or that consulting meant negotiating hostage releases. But they never really heard me. They just smiled politely and changed the subject to something safer, something they could understand. So I stopped trying. Tonight, though, the air felt different. Ryan wasn't just basking in the praise. He was scanning. The weird thing about working in classified ops is that you recognize your own kind. It's not about a uniform or a badge. It's a frequency. It's the way someone sits facing the door, the way they check the exits, the way their eyes track movement while their face stays still. Ryan was doing all of that, and about 10 minutes into the appetizer course, his eyes locked onto me. I wasn't wearing a badge. I wasn't wearing a uniform. I was wearing a gray sweater and slacks. But I wasn't slouching. I wasn't fidgeting. And I wasn't looking at him with the wide-eyed hero worship my parents were displaying. I was watching his hands. He noticed. He shifted in his seat. The easy smile he had worn for Emma faltered just a fraction. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the gears turning in his head. He was trying to figure out why the secretary's sister had the 1,000-yard stare of a predator drone operator. Emma, of course, noticed nothing. She was too busy basking. Olivia's job is so consistent, Emma said, pouring herself more wine. It must be nice, honestly. Low stakes, air conditioning. I don't know how she stays awake some days. But hey, not everyone is built for the front lines, right, Ryan? Ryan didn't answer immediately. He was still looking at me. What exactly do you do, Olivia? Ryan asked. His voice wasn't condescending, it was probing. Department of Defense, I said, keeping my voice flat. Civilian sector, mostly analysis. Analysis of what? He pressed. Supply chains, infrastructure, boring stuff. My dad laughed. She counts beans, Ryan. Someone's got to make sure the army has enough toilet paper, right? The table laughed. Emma giggled. Ryan didn't laugh. Supply chains matter, Ryan said slowly. In the Korangal Valley, back in 18, we got pinned down for 3 days. We ran out of ammo. If a supply drop hadn't hit our grid exactly within a 10-meter window during a sandstorm, I wouldn't be sitting here. He was testing me. He dropped Karanga LD sandstorm and 10-meter window to see if I would react, to see if the bean counter knew what he was talking about. I took a sip of my water. I shouldn't have engaged. I should have just nodded and let it go. But Emma's smirk was so smug. My father's laughter was so dismissive. The Korangal is tricky, I said softly, staring at the candle in the center of the table. Especially the thermal updrafts off the eastern ridge. If the pilot doesn't compensate for the barometric pressure drop after sunset, the payload usually drifts about 2 clicks north. I looked up and met Ryan's eyes. It's a good thing whoever authorized that drop knew how to override the wind shear sensors. The table went silent. My dad looked confused. What are you talking about, Olivia? Wind shear? But Ryan had gone pale. He knew that specific detail, the sensor override on the supply pallets, wasn't in the news. It wasn't in the debriefs. It was a technical workaround that only the pilots and the mission command knew about. He stared at me, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. The air in the room thickened. He realized in that second that he wasn't the only wolf at the table. Emma sensed the attention shifting away from her, and she hated it. Okay, Bill Nye, she snapped, rolling her eyes. So you read a Wikipedia article on helicopters. Congrats. Let's get back to the real stories. Ryan, tell them about the medal. She reached over and grabbed Ryan's arm, pulling him back to her. Olivia is just trying to sound smart, Emma said to the table, her voice sharp. She does. This sometimes. She likes to pretend her little desk job is important so she doesn't feel left out. She looked at me with genuine pity. It's okay, Liv. We know you work hard, but let's leave the war stories to the people who have actually held a gun, okay? I smiled. It was a tight, dangerous smile. You're right, Emma, I said. I'll be quiet. I picked up my fork, and that was when it happened. Buzz, click, buzz, click. The sound didn't come from a speaker. It came from the wood of the table itself, vibrating with an intensity that rattled the silverware. It wasn't a ringtone. It was a Priority 1 klaxon. It was a sound that every person with a top-secret clearance is trained to fear. It meant one thing: immediate crisis. National security threat. All hands override. My phone, face down on the table, was glowing red, a pulsing, angry light that reflected off the wine glasses. Ryan froze. His body went rigid. He knew that sound. He had heard it in command tents. He had heard it in bunkers. What is that? My mom asked, startled. Is that a fire alarm? I didn't answer. The mask was gone. The sister was gone. I picked up the phone. I swiped the biometric lock. Reyes, I said. My voice had changed. It was an octave lower, cold, authoritative, the voice of a woman who commands fleets. I listened for a second. The voice on the other end was the Deputy Director of Operations. Ma'am, we have a code black. The asset is compromised in Sector 4. The extraction team is pinned. We need authorization for a kinetic response. The drone is on station, but the rules of engagement are locked by the White House. I stood up. I didn't ask to be excused. I just stood. Override the ROE, I said into the phone. The room was deadly silent. I am authorizing a jagged edge protocol. Authorization code, Sierra Tango 990. Emma slammed her hand on the table. Olivia, she shouted, put the phone away. We are having a family dinner. You are being incredibly rude. Ryan moved faster than I've ever seen a civilian move. He reached across the gap between them and grabbed Emma's wrist. Hard. Shut up, Ryan hissed. Emma gasped. Excuse me? Shut up, Ryan repeated, his eyes wide, fixed on me. Don't make a sound. My dad stood up, his face red. Now see here, Ryan, you can't talk to my daughter like… Ryan held up a hand, palm out, silencing my father without even looking at him. His focus was entirely on me. He looked terrified. I ignored them all. I walked to the window, looking out at the dark backyard, but seeing a satellite feed in my mind. What's the blast radius? I asked the phone. 70 meters, ma'am. We have civilians in the outer ring. Scrub the grid, I ordered. Switch to the Hellfire R9X, the kinetic blade variant. I want the target neutralized, but I want zero collateral. Do you copy? Copy, ma'am. R9X selected. Time to target, 30 seconds. We need final confirmation. I paused. I felt the weight of the decision. A man's life. A political fallout. A million moving pieces. You have a green light, I said. Execute. I waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Target destroyed. Good effect on the target. Civilians clear, extraction team is moving. Get them to the LZ, I said. And tell the pilot if he drifts north again, I'll have his wings. Understood, Director. Out. I lowered the phone. The screen went black. I took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline cycle out of my system. I rolled my shoulders back, readjusting the invisible weight I carried. I turned back to the table. They were staring at me as I had just grown a second head. My mother was clutching her pearls. My father's mouth was hanging open. Emma looked like she had been slapped. But Ryan? Ryan was standing at attention. His chair was pushed back. His spine was straight. His hands were pinned to his sides. It was instinct, muscle memory. He was standing at attention for a superior officer. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Olivia? My dad whispered. What? Who was that? I didn't answer him. I looked at Ryan. As you were, Sergeant, I said softly. Ryan exhaled, his shoulders dropping slightly, but the respect in his eyes remained absolute. Ma'am, Ryan said, his voice cracked. That was a jagged edge authorization. That requires cabinet-level clearance. It does, I said. You're Overwatch, Ryan whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a realization that hit him like a truck. Operation Dustfall, Syria. The voice on the comms who cleared the route? That was you. I looked at him. You guys were taking heavy fire. I needed to clear the path. Ryan swallowed hard. You saved my life. Emma stood up, her face flushed with confusion and anger. Stop it! What is going on? She works in logistics. She orders printer paper. Ryan, why are you looking at her like that? Ryan turned to Emma, His expression was grim. "Emma, sit down," he said. "No," she screamed. "She's ruining my dinner. She's playing some game on her phone to make herself look important." Ryan looked at Emma, then gestured to me. "That wasn't a game," Ryan said. "That was a sanction order. Your sister just authorized an airstrike." Emma laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. "An airstrike? Olivia? Don't be ridiculous. She cries during the commercial. Ryan?" Ryan looked at me again. "Ma'am, with your permission, I think I need a drink." "Go ahead," I said. I walked back to my chair. I picked up my napkin and placed it on the table. "I'm leaving," I said. "Leaving?" my mom stammered. "But we haven't had dessert." "Olivia, you can't just—" "I have to go to the secure facility," I said. "There will be fallout from the strike. I need to brief the National Security Advisor in an hour." My father stood in my way. He looked at me, searching for the daughter he thought he knew. The quiet one. The weak one. "Olivia," he said, his voice trembling. "Is this true? You're not a secretary?" I looked at him. I looked at the man who had patted me on the head for years and told me I wasn't a go-getter like Emma. "No, Dad," I said. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" he asked. I picked up my purse. I looked at Emma, who was now silent, pale, and shrinking in her seat. "I'm the reason you sleep safely at night," I said. I turned to Ryan. "Good to meet you, Ryan. Thank you for your service." Ryan snapped his heels together and nodded. "Honor is mine, ma'am." I walked out of the dining room. I walked out of the house. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed again. A text from the secure server confirming the team was safe. I got in the car and looked back at the house. Through the window, I could see them sitting there, motionless. The food is getting cold. The narrative of their lives was shattered. Emma would never be able to mock me again. My parents would never look at me with pity again. I had lost my cover, but I had regained my name. I started the engine. The quiet hum of the car was the only sound I needed. I drove away into the dark, toward the job that no one sees, but everyone depends on. 2 days later, Emma called me. I almost didn't answer. I was in my office, the real one, with the biometric scanners and the satellite feeds covering the walls. "Reyes," I answered. "Liv?" Emma's voice was small, hesitant. "It's me." "I know," I said. There was a long pause. "Ryan explained it to me," she said. "Or, well, as much as he could. He said you outrank everyone." "Not everyone," I said, signing a report. "Just most people." "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. The arrogance was gone. She sounded young, scared. "We treated you like you were nothing." "I know," I said. "Was it a test?" she asked. "Did you let us make fools of ourselves on purpose?" I stopped writing. I leaned back in my chair. "It wasn't a test, Emma. It was protection." "Protection?" "The less you knew, the safer you were, and honestly," I paused, "it was easier to let you think I was boring than to explain the things I've seen." She was quiet for a long time. "Dad is shook," she said. "He bought a subscription to Jane's Defense Weekly. He's trying to figure out what your job title actually means." I laughed softly. "Tell him not to bother. It's redacted." Can we see you again?" Emma asked. "Without the secrets? Just dinner?" I looked at the map on my screen. A new hotspot is flaring up in Eastern Europe. "Maybe," I said. "But Emma?" "Yeah? If my phone rings," I said. "Don't tell me to put it away." "I won't," she whispered. "I promise." I hung up. I opened my drawer. Inside was a small box. I opened it. Inside was a challenge coin. It wasn't mine. It had been left on my windshield the morning after the dinner. On one side was the Special Forces crest. On the other side, handwritten in Sharpie on a piece of tape, were the words, "To Overwatch, for the Korangal, for the dinner. Respect. Ryan." I smiled. I closed the box. I turned back to the screens. The world was noisy. The threats were loud. But in the silence of that room, I finally felt heard.